They didn't clap. That was what made me first feel that they didn't move or do that thing that pisses me off, standing up just when the credits wander up the cinema screen. I like to see all the names of the small actors. The film isn't over yet. They didn't struggle with coats. They didn't move. The film had been brilliant. It was this that made me first feel something wasn't quite right. And then suddenly the world snapped back, and there were coughs and little embarrassed laughs, and people standing up in front of the credits, pissing me off, and I was standing and struggling with my coat and probably pissing off the people behind me, and Rachel was moving and we were leaving the cinema, and I didn't think about it until she said, walking towards the car park, she said, "I slept. I think I slept through that last bit." No, I'm confused. It was at that moment I felt something wasn't right. I was 35 years old. Content, and not yet at the midpoint of my life's supposed journey. It took 16 days or so for me to become the last person conscious in England. This process was mathematically predictable, it turns out, although no one was thinking of mathematics at the time. People, normal people, try to sleep about 8 hours. Our plague, it was gradual. It was simple. It proceeded logically. At first, it was people sleepy watching film in a warm bath after a heavy meal. Everyday things we've all done, things to be shrugged away. But the plague became greedy. Our plague was an expansive plague, and it had a simple plan. Each day, people slept 1 hour longer. 7 a.m. became 8. 8 became 9. Our rush hour shifted towards midday, and then all sense of rush became lost from memory, as if the business of being busy and our contacts with the living present world were just a list of kings and queens, just facts written down somewhere once, and now smilingly forgotten. It was the absence of panic that surprised me. People slept through multiple alarms but woke feeling none. We were a country, a world of unacknowledged electronic bleeping, of unconsidered sounds, of warning. So, say 8 hours sleep we started with, an extra hour a day lost, 16 days or so is how long it took to lose the world. Eight days into the sleep, I went to see my best friend, Rachel. I went at noon. I walked through half-deserted streets. Those few that walked too walked separately, muffled muttering into scarves and hoodies, awake but sinking hour by hour into the embrace of the dream world. A woman mumbling at a bus shelter as I crossed into King Henry's Walk in a business suit and carpet slippers. Where were you though? Where were you though? That day I waited for you. Do you understand? I waited for you. I walked away. I turned into Mildmay South, a train track, strange and silent, and I pushed on a front door which I knew would be unlocked. Rachel lay naked on her sofa, her legs curled up above her on the headrest, her head hanging down. She was watching the clouds through her little basement window. Her eyes were open, but it took a long time for her to see me. We sat in silence for many minutes. I didn't know what to say. There was a single song on repeat on her laptop, and sometimes she would whisper lyrics to herself. And then her body twisted, her legs moving without control, muscles not responding to the little logic left inside her. I moved to her, held her, waited for the spasm to pass. Her body went limp. She looked at me with sudden, piercing clarity. "You haven't changed, have you? You will. Once an insomnia, but you will. I think I might be hungry." I fed her that day. Tuna from the fridge, grudging, distracted mouthfuls, and I left her, happy as a child, lying on the sofa watching the sky, tracing its patterns. She would sleep again soon. I saw for the first time that we were starving to death. I began my great exploration, empty London. I decided to take tea at the Ritz. I said that to myself, take tea. I walked through Green Park, picked up a discarded doorman's hat at the entrance to the Ritz, slipped it on my head, and walked in. The tea room was made of gold. It was like a thing for an old king before the inevitable revolution. There were 3 women, sleeping, sitting straight up on a wide sofa, older women, one dark, one red-headed, one brunette. They were speaking out loud, words stumbling, confused, in the labyrinth corridor of the Great Sleep. I did not know if they knew what had happened to them, if they thought of the past or the future. I walked away from the golden tea room and up into the great silent hotel. Perhaps I would take a room instead of taking tea. And then I turned a corner off the staircase and an arm came snaking towards me. A woman's arm, all gym hardened and yoga supple. A woman, awake, an arm reaching for my throat, for my breath, was it? I screamed and I screamed and I clawed at the arm, clawed this other thing away from me. But she was a sleeper too. She was a sleepwalker, tottering, lost, in a dress for a concert or to go to the theatre in the 1950s. Had she dressed up for the great sleep like those people waiting for the water in Titanic? She walked past me slowly, brushing against the walls, oblivious, stinking, lost. I didn't check to see if there were other walkers. No. It was 5 p.m. and I felt nothing. I felt something worse than nothing. It was 5 p.m. and I felt tired. I felt tired in my heart and tired in my bones, and then suddenly, screamingly, fear came back to me. I did not want to go to sleep. I did not want to go into the dark. I stumbled out of the Dead Man's Hotel and I ran down Piccadilly trying to force energy into my limbs, an athlete leading at the end of a long race, terrified to look over her shoulder. My eyes losing precision. Partial vision of a bus driver sleeping over the wheel of a 38. Of a woman comatose next to the Starbucks she had hoped would solve the riddle. A line of Boris bikes untouched. And then I heard music. Music loud, coming from an open door on Dover Street. It was one of those rich bars where the 1% go. The central area was full of couples sleeping, hunched over little expensive tables and little expensive dresses. They had turned the music up as loud as possible to try and stay awake. Well, it turns out Bang & Olufsen had not saved them. I sat on a bar stool and poured whiskey into a glass. The music played on. It was 6 p.m. and I was becoming lost. My hours were winding down too. Rachel was right. I was no different. None of us were different. My eyes began to close. I heard the music and I understood for the first time the power of the great sleep. It was wonderful emptiness, the sleep. It was alone without any lonely. It was rest with obligations all forgotten, but I knew that it was wrong. I knew that it was wrong to feel love for absence. I knew that we must fight, always fight. And the singer, was it a dream? It must have been a dream. The singer walked towards me, still singing. This woman singing with a loving face, a grown-up face, mother to a protected child, a face that said, I know the secret. The singer, she was singing just for me. And she knew what was wrong with us. She knew what was wrong. She said to me, she said, Joe. And I understood. The whole mystery was clear to me in that instant. And I woke. I had slept for 15 hours and my time was short. It was clear to me. The problem and also the answer. We think we dream in our sleep. We escape. We mustn't escape. We must live. We've been escaping for too long, escaping how we live our lives. We can avoid the great sleep. I walked down the steps and out of the rich bar. The world all melting darling. I picked up a fallen Boris bike. I set off on my journey. Each day we walk across the bridge to work and we don't recognize those around us. And they, looking for that self-same sleep, start to not recognize us. The answer was love. Love would wake the world. I could prove it. Joe. I would wake Joe. He was the boy. You know who he was. You, each of you, have given up on a dream, haven't you? It doesn't have to be a person, it can be an idea, but for me, in my life, an idea always lived in another person, and if I lost or betrayed that person, then the idea was lost. But then gradually, night after night, one after the other, all our ideas start slipping into the dark, and then one day we can walk across London Bridge to work, not recognizing and unrecognized. I veered through stationary traffic and through my ghost city. I rode full of hope, serenaded by an unseen singer. I rode fleeing my fate, fleeing the great sleep that was chasing me along my own sinews. And all along, I knew where he would be. I knew to cross St. James's Bridge, to head towards the river, to head always south, to cross the now deserted bridge. I knew where he'd be. I knew how we'd be saved. I was awake. I was awake. I was awake. His front door was open as I knew it must be. Felt like a fairy tale. The walls of the stair were liquid like dreams. Up the stairs and onto the roof. Vast, light. And he. It was him. Curled up asleep like a little boy. I kiss him and I kneel back and wait for him to wake. Huh. Sleeping Beauty. His eyes open. Where were you? Here. All along. And he was drifting away. So I took out my phone and I plugged one ear into my ear and one ear into his and pressed play. I knew I could not keep him awake. I saw my answer was no answer. It was just day-to-day epiphany. I knew then, at that moment, he would drift away and I would drift away, and that would be that. I listened to the music and waited for the sleep to come. I wanted to say, once we were married. Once there was a different life. Once we did not make mistakes. Once we did not drift willingly away from what we believed. But it would not have been a story to say that. It would have been a symptom. No. I had recognized him, and he had recognized me.